G'day and welcome to the Hunting Connection podcast. My name is Zach Williams and I am your host. Here we'll connect you with hunters, fishers and outdoor enthusiasts from around the globe. This podcast will share hunting and fishing stories including past experiences and tackle the tough hunting stereotypes our community faces. We hope to be a positive influence to those outside the community while also having a laugh along the way. Hope you enjoy the podcast. G'day and welcome to Hunting Connection podcast. On today's episode, I'm excited to bring you a special episode recorded right along the coast with Mark Koolmatrie, a Ngarrindjeri elder and passionate advocate for traditional and modern hunting practices. We had to take the conversation into the car due to the weather, but that didn't stop us from diving deep into the recent bow hunting ban, the rich traditions of hunting and spearfishing, and the importance of uniting our communities. Mark also shares his love for wild food and talks about Cool Tours, his cultural experience company that offers a truly immersive connection to the land. Stick around for an insightful and inspiring conversation. Cheers. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm down here with Mark down at Christie's Beach, Noarlunga area. Mark, welcome onto the podcast.
No, thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to this because I'm really passionate about hunting.
Yep.
What I'm passionate about the most is our people's ability to continue something that has gone on for tens of thousands of years.
100%.
And that is around hunting, also fishing, that whole ability to be able to practice cultural rights.
Yep. And so we'll just give a little bit of an intro to yourself.
So I'm Mark Koolmatrie. I'm a Ngarrindjeri elder, which means I belong to the Coorong, the lower lakes of Lake Albert, Lake Alexandrina, the lower River Murray, all the way over where we believe our dreaming story concludes on what we call Ngarrindjeri or Kangaroo Island.
Yep.
And we believe all of those waters, those land, and the cosmology is also important to our people.
Yeah, beautiful. It's an incredible area, like we were discussing before we started the podcast, that I spent a lot of time fishing the Coorong with my grandparents. My pop growing up, he did a lot of the land clearing around Salt Creek, and he spent a lot of time, Mount Gambier all the way through to Meningie clearing land on the dozers, and he's got a very, great passion for the land down there. We go down for the salmon run every year, and before they banned cockling along that Coorong stretch there, we'd go down cockling and, just spend a whole weekend there, shark fishing, salmon fishing, mulloway fishing, and just, me being, from very young to mid-teens, I would just explore the sand dunes and check out the whole country down there. So I've got a massive passion for that area and this stretch of coastline. Like my mum's dad, he's from down this way, so I spent a fair bit of time down this way as well when I was younger and exploring the coastline along here. And it's just incredible stretch of coastline and incredible country.
There's some spectacular spots all around our coastline of South Australia. And so, it is about preserving this coastline and preserving the environment. And it's interesting, you talked about clearing of the land, and that's what it was like.
Yeah.
But today it's about how do we do nature repair? How do we repair some of the damage that might have been done? We're not saying that it was a wrong thing to do because, we needed those sort of industries.
Yeah.
But what we're saying is, how do we just do some nature repair for a little bit of the environment?
Yeah.
That's going to improve the whole environment.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I've always grown up being like a massive nature kid. Like Steve Irwin was my idol. Always wanted to be a park ranger growing up. Like that was my dream job, to be a park ranger. Until I learnt that in South Australia, being a park ranger's seem to be keeping people off the land and exploring the land and exploring bush food, where that's what my passion is, sharing, hunted and caught game with friends and family. Even though that most of all the animals I hunt are introduced species from deer, rabbits, hares, but I still get to go introduce that to people. And then when I take them out on the land, like, I'm teaching them about stuff that I'm passionate about. And yeah, just, you know, I got right into like tree planting when I was younger. My school had a few programs where we went and revegetated the land, and then I was young friends of Murray Alter and we did similar programs to that. And then through high school, I did, you know, other conservation programs, and I absolutely love it. Like, people think that hunters and hunting want, you know, all these animals off the land, but if we get rid of all these animals off the land and we destroy the environment, we've got nothing to go in and enjoy. And that's what we're
exactly
all about.
it. And this is what I find with working with a lot of hunters. They want to look after the environment, because without the environment, they don't have the ability to bow hunt, to fish, to shoot. All of these things that are done in a controlled way, they don't have an ability to do that.
Yeah.
So they also give back to the environment. And many people don't see that. Many don't see that what the shooters and hunters actually do to give back to the environment, and how they are the first people to put their hand up when we look at nature repair. They are the ones who say, hey, we're already doing this, but let's do more. And they're willing to do more and more. But lots of times that don't get seen.
Yeah.
People don't see what they're actually doing to improve the environment.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, you've mentioned that you've been doing a little bit of work with Shassa and Graham from Shassa. What type of things have you been doing with them?
It's just being a part and an understanding of how our people can work with all South Australians to bring back the old ways in the new world. And that's what I talk about all of the time. Our people have got these old ways of doing things that has held and stood the test of time for tens of thousands of years. So what we do is bring back. Now, one of the important things is science and Aboriginal knowledges can work together. Yeah. They can coexist to improve in an environment. Now, what we are very big on from a little company I own called Cool Tours, where we do Aboriginal cultural tours throughout the Fleurieu Peninsula and Kangaroo Island. What we want to do there is work in what's called oneness, whereby we as South Australians are together as one.
Yeah.
And that means we look at the problems, we look at the solutions, we work together as a way forward rather than looking in the rear vision mirror. And it's a different model and a different way of doing things, because quite often many people don't get the opportunity to sit at the table with our people and have these open discussions. But it also depends on who you're talking with as well, because on both sides of, you know, our people and the rest of society, there is these divisions and barriers that are put up to keep us separated.
Yes.
But by working with Chassa, working with Graham and a number of others, what happens is we look at these barriers and we know that these barriers don't exist and they're just invisible. Yep. So we work through this, and then we give out the message of this can really happen. It's a reality that people can work in harmony together.
Yeah, look, 100%. Everything you said there is exactly how I look at things. Like, there's too much division between, like, First Nations people and everyone else in South Australia, but it seems to be the government pushing for that separation of things, where we have very similar models and what we want done. You know, we like I've said before, we want to be able to use the land and have better control of the land. Like, I said to you earlier that I'm not a massive fan of national parks, and that's just because that's how things are being run in there. Like, you know, you've got, like, fire management is not done very well at all, where the First Nations people do an amazing job doing that type of stuff, and we see it again and again, especially through Northern Territory, where the Indigenous people can, like, clear the landscape their natural ways. It has amazing effects, where now we lock everything up. You can't collect firewood, you can't make tracks, you can't collect bush tucker. and everything just overgrows, and then we get a big bushfire come through, and it just absolutely destroys everything, rather than, the way your people have controlled the land for
so fire
thousands of
management
years.
is an interesting topic. Now, up in the territory, in places like that, it is still a cultural way of doing things. What we're trying to bring back in many respects is a cultural burning. But at the moment, a lot of that knowledge has been lost. So what has happened in the past is we've looked at environmental burns. But these environmental burns quite often are for cultural reasons.
Yep.
But they've never been called that. And I think where we are at the moment is a very interesting time in society, because we've got these so-called environmental burns, but if we had another layer of a cultural burn or a burn for cultural purposes, I think then we can see a difference. And we'll start sitting at the table all together.
Yeah.
And about what would we need a burn for? How do we do it? Who's going to be involved? And so there's participation right across the board, not just try to put it in silos for things like fire management.
Yeah.
And I think everything else, and I mentioned earlier on today, is that we try to look at putting things into silos. And instead of looking at a holistic view of things, it's like, well, this has got to be done today, that one's tomorrow, and then the next, and then next week or next month. So they're all separated.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work for everyone. What we need is purpose. We're going to be doing this for these purposes. And I think what it takes, though, is people with knowledge of what these purposes are, and being able to allow other people to participate instead of saying, this is how it is. Government says this is how it is and this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not against government, but I'm against sometimes the way they do things when they don't listen and they're very closed-minded. That's what I'm against.
Yeah.
And so quite often government sees me as one of these people who is causing a bit of ruckus for them. But it's not that at all. I'm just trying to point out to whether or not it's government, whether or not it's organisations or agencies, departments, whether or not it's the general person walking along the street. This is what I believe. Now, I might be wrong. And if I'm wrong, I'm already willing to listen where I might be wrong.
Yeah.
And my thinking might be wrong. And so, but like the other side, it's very closed. This is what it is, and this is what we're doing. And this is why the public don't understand it. It is why many people, like you're talking about the bow hunters, we're talking about those that are shooters, those who are fishermen, or women that go out fishing. They don't understand why they can't fish.
Yeah.
And you know, there's a great little company that takes out women, particularly just for fishing.
That's amazing.
And giving them an experience. Now, one of the things that concerns me around the banning of bow hunting is every year during January on the York Peninsula, the Ngarrindjeri people, they have a special festival about spearfishing around looking for butterfish.
Yep.
And if bow hunting, for example, is taken away, the next thing may particularly be the spearfishing.
Yeah.
Or, you know, some people within government believes it's a wrong thing to put a hook into a fish.
Yes.
And so, you know, if you're taking away the cultural right for people to be spearfishing, that could cause a huge problem for the people of the York Peninsula in particular, and other places around the world. You know, bow hunting and you know, using of darts and a number of other things has been a part of our relatives around the world for tens of thousands of years.
Yeah.
And now we're asking them to change their cultural practices or cease their cultural practices because it's deemed to be bad. But what I'm really strong on, if it's done correctly and not just willy-nilly, Not just going out shooting things, bow hunting, fishing anywhere and everywhere, ignoring the benefits that could bring through recreational fishing or even commercial fishing. When we're looking at without being rules and restrictions, that could cause problems.
Yeah, 100%.
Because we don't want people going out there with bow hunting everywhere and anywhere, or shooting or anything else. It's got to be a control, and this is why Chassa is so good, because there's controls put in.
Yeah.
You have to be able to have the ability and have quality shooting before you can get ticked off.
Yeah.
And bow hunting's the same. There's restrictions, there's quality assurance within it. And this is what needs to happen to ensure that it's done safely and correctly.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like with the bow hunting side of things, especially, it's people buying eBay bows or going to a cash converters, buying a bow off the shelf, not buying hunting arrows but using target arrows, and that's when you see things like the kangaroos with arrows in them, or the one that they used off of Kangaroo Island, the seal with arrows in them. They're not using hunting tips, they're using target tips, and then us bow hunters are being tarnished with that same brush, which is very, very frustrating. We would be happy if, there was more regulation. You had to go do a proficiency test through like the ABA, the Australian Bow Hunting Association, and join a club. That would be fine. If it was licensed, yes, it brings more of a restriction on getting people in, but it also might stop as much tarnishing us. But there's always going to be those bad eggs who have a cheap bow and go out there and just shoot anything that moves, and that's not what bow hunters are like. That's not what traditional hunters are like. You guys have you have your practices that like kangaroos and everything else. There's the right way to do things and there's the wrong way to do things.
That's it. Like our traditional hunting wasn't done by anybody and everybody.
Yeah.
Only certain ones were able to do that. And even when the young boys were going through from boyhood to manhood, they were taught properly how to do it. So there was a roundabout efficiency.
Yeah.
Not just the way it is. Now, one rule should be that we shouldn't be able to just buy a bow in a second-hand shop.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're going to change the laws, South Australian government, look at those sort of things so that people have a license to be able to do this. Because the last thing we want is a kangaroo with a bow through the side, with an arrow, rather, not a bow, but an arrow through the side of its neck.
Yeah.
We don't want that.
No, we don't.
We don't want, because say people are tired of looking at the seals.
Yeah.
In our region, we don't want the seals to have an arrow in them, or even to be shot or clubbed or ran over with a vehicle. And these sort of things have happened in the past, not long ago. And we don't want those things to happen. But what we want to do is be able to work with government for solutions. If there's a problem, how do we find a solution? And those solutions must come from within the correct people who are doing it.
Yeah. Just quickly with the seal side of stuff, especially around the lower lakes and the Murray Mouth, there's these issues with the seals. Just like there's too many of them. What do you like? Did your people used to hunt them back in the day?
I don't know. Well, we didn't use them for food.
Okay. Yeah.
And I don't know of any stories of hunting them.
Yeah.
I think our people just thought to themselves they have a right to be there. Now, it's the whole thing where I think something is wrong is around, say, kangaroos.
Yep.
Shooting them and leaving them.
Yeah, I
think
hate it.
that is a problem.
Yep.
Because I've been on about this for a few years. Around there's either an overabundance of kangaroos and they become a problem, or there's a lack of feed and then there's a problem.
Yep.
So we've got to work out solutions around everything. And whatever that looks like, fixing the environment. Does it mean restrictions from who can use bow hunting, or who can shoot, or who can fish. Whether or not these restrictions, and you almost got to have a license to do it all. And I think those sort of things where government can have buy-in. They can have buy-in by listening to the right people and saying, well, what is needed? Because, government, in their wisdom, can see there are some issues and there are concerns from a government point of view.
Yep.
And I congratulate government for finding that there is problems that they want to address. But if there is a problem, let's find solutions rather than putting a blanket ban on everything.
Yeah, with the kangaroo thing, that's a great subject, because controlling kangaroos on private property, there's 3 different tags you can get here in South Australia. One where you shoot and leave the animal, and it's an absolute waste. There's one where you can take the meat and use it on the property, and then the one where you can use the meat off the property. And that's the hardest one to get, where you would think it should be the other way around. Like, you should have to take the meat and utilize as much of it as you can. So in America, they have wanton waste laws where you can't go and shoot a native deer or a native elk or a pronghorn or whatever other native species that they're chasing. You can't shoot it and leave it, or just take the good cuts. You have to take 80, 90, 98% of that animal's meat and utilize everything, whether it's the internal organs, take the heart, take the liver, and utilize it. Where in South Australia and Australia, we're aerial culling kangaroos and deer and just letting the carcasses rot. And it blows my mind that the people that are pushing that side of things are the animal rights activists. They're I'm not going to say names because I don't want to get you in.
Yeah, no. I don't want to get in trouble
with the local governments, because you are working with them and you're someone that they will listen to, and that's something that I've said as hunters. We need to work with the Indigenous people of Australia, not just South Australia, to work out how we can better control and better manage the land. Because at the moment we're just wasting so much resource. You drive through Adelaide and look at the homeless problem through the city. It is ridiculous, and a lot of those people are Indigenous people. We could be taking these kangaroo carcasses to a processor. We could be taking these deer carcasses to a processor and giving them this amazing free-range meat, and helping communities, helping struggling families, helping the homeless. And we're not. It just blows my mind. In a society where we don't want to waste anything, we're wasting thousands and thousands of kilos of this natural resource.
Exactly it. Now, one of the things that governments, both state and federal, are really strong about is closing the gap. So, I can't remember what the death rate of our people are, but the last I saw was Aboriginal men normally last in this world about 48 years.
Yep.
And then the women are around about 58. But if we're able to give people wholesome, quality, lean meats, good food, it's going to change. So if they're closing the gap, if they're not reaching their targets currently, what's being done. So if they're serious about closing the gap and the health of our people and improving it, what better way to give people quality lean meats?
Yeah, exactly.
Or even people who say that the animal activists, for example, they have a right to have their opinion, I believe.
100%.
But, once you eat a vegetable, you pull it out of the ground, it's dying.
Yep.
We all know this, is that you pull a carrot out of the ground, after a little while, it becomes soft and no good.
Yep.
So it's slowly dying.
Yeah.
So those same people who are saying that's cruel are eating vegetables, and they're killing them.
Yeah.
And like it's a different way of thinking about it, because when you take something out of the ground, it's a slow and painful death for that carrot.
Yeah. And like we live in this monocrop agricultural system where, you know, you have to poison everything to, you know, get rid of the bugs to stop eating the food. Then, you know, farmers will be shooting, just say in Australia, kangaroos to keep them off the crops. And then we harvest it all and we're killing more and more animals. So for that, you know, just say corn, we're killing 100 animals for that one piece of corn. Where if we're eating, you know, kangaroo, or if we're eating deer, we're killing that one animal and we're getting 60 kilos of meat from that one animal. Or we're killing, you know, 100 animals for this one cob. And if you're looking at it as, you know, microorganisms, like you're killing thousands and thousands of things. And, you know, nature has a process. We need to let it do its thing on that side of things.
Yeah, so our people have a concept, the Ngarrindjeri people, of a system called the Ngarrindjeri system.
Yep.
Ngarrindjeri is a word loosely for totem.
Okay.
And what happens is that area that I spoke of earlier on, between the lower River Murray, those lower lakes, the Coorong, the Southern Ocean, and over onto Kangaroo Island, across all of that we have what's called 18 Ngarrindjeri, or clans. So groups of people, some belong to the freshwater, some belong to the lower River Murray, some belongs to the lakes of that freshwater, others belong to the saltwater.
Yep.
And depending on where you're from, that's what you belong to. Now we have a special relationship that we had to look after one thing within our area. What also happens is within our family groups that we lived within those areas, we also then had to look after something as a responsibility as a family. So that's two things. Also what we have is something within our stomach and our abdomen that we got to look after. It's almost like a gut feeling, but we call it our miwi.
Okay.
Now our miwi directs us because it's a connection with self. Now our miwi tells us the third thing we must look after as individuals. Now when we look after everything, we look after everything within the planet. Now it means if your totem or your Ngarrindjeri is a kangaroo, you don't eat it.
Okay.
However, what you do, you ensure you look after it so others can eat it. If your totem or your Ngarrindjeri is a plant, you look after that plant so that someone else could use it as a bush food or a bush medicine. So really what we're doing, we're looking after three things as a group of people. Now if you look after three things in the world, each, we're looking after, I'm not sure how many people in the world, billions.
Billions,
We're looking after billions times three of everything in the world.
Yeah, that's interesting. May I ask what your
my family one was looking after the Ngarrindjeri was looking after the wild dog.
Okay.
Now the wild dog is no longer around.
Yep.
But that wild dog that we did have on the Coorong also applies to things like the dingo.
Yep.
Within our family group, we had to look after what's called the mulloway, or the mulloway, the fish.
Yep.
So when they come in through into the Murray mouth and came into the Coorong to spawn, we must look after them. And then they can go out and grow up. So our responsibility was to make sure that when they were coming in, this female coming in to spawn, that no one fished for them.
Okay.
Now, it becomes a problem if we try to say no one is fishing in the Murray mouth for mulloway. But it's only for a certain time of the year. We're not saying don't fish anywhere else along the coastline for mulloway. But during this period, no one should be fishing. Now that becomes a problem because we're not trying to stop people fishing, but it's only for, say, a month.
Yep.
We're saying restricting or stopping people from fishing.
Which I think's a good thing.
It is a good thing.
We should have closed seasons for this fish. We're seeing stuff with the snapper ban. We're seeing stuff with mulloway fishing. You know, down here in the Onkaparinga, you've got like the brim, like they've got a closed season. It makes sense. We should regulate seasons for these animals. And it's not saying an all outright ban, like you're saying. There should be regulated seasons for these things. Like, we have an amazing fishery in South Australia. We've got amazing coastline, we've got amazing creeks and estuaries, and we need to look after it. But having, like, I'm not sure what your thoughts are on marine parks, but, you know, stopping fishing in certain areas over spawning makes sense to me. Stop having an outright
blanket ban on things
in areas that doesn't make sense to me. You know, there's reasons they do it, but there's better methods we could use to, you know, look after the
what
ecosystem.
also doesn't make sense to me is for our people only to have the ability to hunt and
Yep.
fish for cultural reasons.
Yep.
I'm not saying we shouldn't be,
Yep.
but if we're able to do it, what about other South Australians? And again, it's creating a division between our people who culturally might be able to hunt and fish and gather, and the rest of society who can't.
Yeah, and
So that they are things that really concern me.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying by any means that our people shouldn't be allowed to, and that's why I've brought up about spearfishing. Now, at the moment, there is no ban on spearfishing.
No.
However, if you think about it, it's just a matter of time before this comes up. Now, what's it going to be? Oh, no, the Aboriginal people can bow hunt, fish, shoot, but the rest of society can't.
yeah, that's a great point you bring up. Like, me as a hunter, I love all forms of hunting and learning all forms of finding bush food, and you know, it's something we don't have here that I can't go out and learn how to hunt the traditional ways here in South Australia and find a lot of the traditional foods, because there's no way of, like, there's no real groups of people teaching. I would love to be able to take Indigenous, you know, guys out and show them to go hunt deer and that, because there's not like that opportunity for them. And being able to swap these methods of hunting, like, we should all be able to work together. Like,
I think you've just brought up a great point, and that is not only like the swapping of methods, but the sharing of methods
and knowledge.
and knowledge, because you know a lot of our cultural knowledge and wisdom has been lost
Yeah.
through a lot of other things. But there are people, you know, when I was growing up, there were older people within places like Ngarrindjeri that knew far more about the land, the fishing, the hunting than our own people.
Yeah.
But by working together and sharing those different methods and strategies, I think it can build this next layer and the next wave of people coming through who will be then looked after properly and know how to look for the signs that not only the Aboriginal people may have this incredible knowledge about the environment, hunting, gathering, all of those things, but then that can be shared with these other groups.
Yeah.
And the groups that are established can also share their knowledges with us. And I think that just builds a better society.
100%. Like, you know, if we were all able to work together and pass on these traditions, like, you know, me culturally, my family's been hunting for, you know, thousands and thousands of years. Everybody's has. We've all come from different backgrounds and hunting different game, but we can all share our knowledge together and, you know, care for the ecosystem better, care for the land better, care for each other better, because like you said before, there's that much division here in Australia, not just South Australia, but Australia. But we've got all these amazing cultures coming in together as one place, and we can share all these hunting methods. We could share all this amazing, you know, like if things are only being passed down to one group of people, that's going to die with that one group of people. But if we're sharing that information to everyone, and in a more culturally like acceptable way, where it's not being forced on people, but people are actually going out and wanting to learn it, they're going to be able to pass that down to future people. Like I've got two boys. I've got a 10-year-old and a 4-year-old. My 4-year-old absolutely loves hunting and fishing, all things outdoors. He's he's identical to what I was at that age. You know, I was talking to people about the bow hunting ban, and he got upset that he's not allowed to go bow hunting when he's older because he wants to go out and explore this stuff. Like his first bit of meat that he ever ate was venison I shot. He was a week old, and I was butchering venison on the bench with him strapped to my chest. He's eaten crocodile. He wants to absolutely try absolutely everything we can. He's had camel. He sees an animal and asks what it tastes like, But, there's a lot of these animals that we can't learn how to hunt, and we can't, but everything has its balances and flows, and if you have regulations on it, these people could have it. Like talking to my pop when he used to clear land, he, worked with Aboriginal people. And one of the delicacies from that area, I'm not sure if you'll agree or not, I'm not too sure, but echidna apparently is amazing bush tucker.
Amazing.
Apparently it's very fatty and
Yep.
but I'll never get to try that. It's something that I would love to try. One of my friends, Caleb, he went and visited for about 3-4 months with Ernie Dingo. He went to all of those indigenous communities through the top end, and he got to experience trying sea turtle. He got to experience trying sea turtle eggs. He got to collect them. He got to do all of this amazing stuff that people don't get to see and do. And it was amazing hearing him talk about it and hearing how well Ernie Dingo's respected by the people in that area. And he got Caleb, he's from England. He's not even he wasn't born in Australia, and he got to experience all of that, and it opened his eyes to how amazing Australia is and how amazing Indigenous customs are. But it's not something that we get to pass down to everyday people, which is just crazy. There's this disconnect between food, land, and people. And we all have it. And you take people out, and they're just amazed. There's people that have never been out hunting before, and I've taken them out hunting, and you take them out, you show them what the deer's eating, what the animals are, and they take it, and they're like, this is something that feels right. Why aren't majority of the people trying to do this? Because it just feels right. You sleep under the stars, you have a kangaroo tail stew on the fire. It's crazy.
It's something else.
It's
it
amazing.
Really is something else. And unfortunately, many people don't get that experience. And then if they don't get it, there's something missing in their lives.
Yep.
Now, we're not saying everybody, you must go out and hunt, because some people don't want to do that.
100%.
And that's fine. I was thinking when you were talking this now about people just experiencing and coming together as one. In the 1990s, I lived over in Wallaroo,
Okay.
and I met a family over there, and I'd go and have meals with them, but that family taught me so much about humility. They taught me so much about hunting. They taught me things about how people can accept each other, and I learned a lot from them, and they're mostly into shooting at the moment. And that's what they love.
Yeah.
And that they then filter down to the next generation and the next generation. And just that learning that occurred by sitting down at the table, enjoying good food with people, was an amazing experience for me.
Yeah, and I've been lucky to hunt Mexico, the United States, New South Wales, Victoria, both islands in New Zealand, and meeting all these different families over there, meeting the Mexican people over there, and we went and shot a bunch of javelina, which is a native peccary. It kind of looks like a pig but much smaller, and they asked us to shoot a bunch of them, so we shot them and brought them back to them, and they just watching them process it, something that they've done for thousands of years. Going over to New Zealand and meeting the Maori people, and learning all their iconic New Zealand's really good, as in that the Maori people still teach people, what's bush tucker, how to live off the land, and, all the bush medicines. But we just don't have that in the same system here, like you were saying with the division. There's all these things where it's this has gone from this white name to this indigenous name, and we're only going to call that. Where in New Zealand they have, this is the white name, this is the indigenous name. That's respect both. You know, we're all here. We all, you know, and doing it the way they're doing it is just causing more division. Where, you know, these other countries, they work with the indigenous people really well, and you're seeing it with some of the indigenous communities in America and Alaska. You know, the reason I asked about the seals before was you've got all the Inuit people who hunt seals, and listening to some of the hunting podcasts I listen to, they've gone to, you know, hunt seals with the Inuit people. They've had this seal oil, they've had this whale blubber, and tried all these different indigenous foods, and it's opened their eyes up. And then me hearing about that has made me think about, you know, like, we've got all these issues with certain animals here. We should be able to utilize them more and share this culture and knowledge around.
Yeah, like, just when you're talking about the hunting of whales, now, our people, it wasn't, and it's still not a good idea, because we honour the whale.
Yep.
We call it Condorley, the southern white whale, and there are special dreaming stories
Yep.
about that. So we are about protecting the whale.
Yep.
But unfortunately, when whale hunting was occurring around, just say, off Encounter Bay, our people joined into that.
Okay.
But today, we are about protecting the whale,
Yep.
honouring the whale, and we would do anything and everything to look after the whale.
Yeah.
But that's the way, because it's one of these iconic totems amongst our people.
Yeah.
So that's the Ngarrindjeri people.
Yep.
From around that sort of Encounter Bay, Victor Harbour, that sort of Port Elliot, and all
Yep.
those regions. When Condorley comes home, and there's a special winter whale festival to celebrate Condorley coming back home. And that's the way we see it. But we do see the values that many other people put on different animals all around the world.
Yeah, exactly.
And, you know, it was interesting for me as I was in Perth earlier this year, and I met a lady there from Peru, and she was saying to me, you know, I'd love you to come to Peru and, you know, just to have a look at their culture, what they do. And she was telling me how they keep guinea pigs, and the guinea pigs are used as a really celebration of eating them. And like, my immediate thought was, eating a guinea pig, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But she said it's a celebration. And so she said, when you come to Peru, would you eat guinea pig? And I said, of course I would. I might be thinking right now, I don't know about that. No. I don't think I'll eat a guinea pig. But the reality is people do it.
Yeah.
And what we must do is respect other people's cultural rights and values. And when I'm talking about cultural, I'm just not talking about the indigenous groups around the world.
Yep.
I'm talking about all peoples.
Yep.
And we must understand that it's nothing wrong with being a vegetarian. But I think those people who are predominantly meat eaters and the people who are vegetarians in this case must understand each other, rather than saying, well, look at those vegetarians, they're wrong. Or look at those meat eaters, they're wrong.
Yeah.
We must understand each other and understand what people value. And that's what makes us a unique society in the world, because we must value everyone else. You look at the AFL football, there are 18 teams. Everyone can barrack for a different team.
Yeah.
We all don't have to follow one team. And that's the beauty about it. And we can all have banter and all of that around your teams. But you are allowed to barrack to a separate footy team to somebody else.
Yeah.
And they're the sort of things that we must honour and respect, is that other people have different values, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, I personally back for Fremantle. There's not many of us in South Australia, and probably not many of us around Australia. But that's who I am.
Yeah.
But other people can barrack for Adelaide, Port Adelaide, Collingwood, whoever else. They can barrack for them. that can be their team. And this is how we need a different change of mindset, that it's okay if somebody eats different foods. That's fine.
Yep.
Do what, just because I'm thinking I may not eat a guinea pig, I'm not saying the people of Peru are wrong.
Yeah, 100%.
And they're the sort of thinkings that we must change. We must change our mindsets.
Definitely. Like, how do you think we could, get hunting, not so much on the mainstream, but get more Indigenous people involved? Because me personally, I haven't met too many Indigenous people that hunt in South Australia. I know people that want to get into it. Shane, like I was speaking to you about earlier, I've said, mate, next time you're free and you're in South Australia, I want to take you out. I want to take you out, to my deer properties and come check out the land, And, he wants to return the favour, go fishing down the Yorks. How can we set up programs where, like people go out and share this wild food and pass this knowledge on, these different hunting methods?
I think the first step is to know that it's okay to be hunting.
Yeah.
And then, because there are our people who go out and shoot kangaroo.
Yeah.
They may not be licensed to do so, but they're doing it because that's their staple diet.
That's their right.
And it's their right to do it. What I think we need to do is, all of these different organisations need to work through a plan with government. And government have got to understand that our people have a right to be hunting.
Yeah.
And then how are we going to do it properly so that the right people get the opportunity to be able to hunt and fish. And there are laws around what is required for that.
Yeah.
And I think until we do that, there's going to be these problems. And, but where there's a problem, there's a solution. And I think it's going to take a bit more discussions about, well, these are our concerns. Our concerns are there is not enough Indigenous people who are a part of our organisation. So then these organisations need to look at and find the right Indigenous people to open these conversations up.
Yep.
Then put together a plan, take it to government and say, this is what we're doing. Do you support this? We want to teach them how to use bows correctly.
Yep.
We want to teach them how to shoot correctly. We want to show them how to fish correctly. So, like I mentioned earlier on, the people of York Peninsula, they know, it's a part of them how to spearfish. It's a part of them growing up. Now, I'm not sure how many of them are licensed to do that. But what I do know is government are always there during that festival. So government is supporting these people to go spearfishing. So if that's the case and they're unlicensed, it seems to be an oxymoron. Why are you saying that people need to be licensed, but you're supporting people doing activities that are not, or you're not even checking if they're licensed?
Yeah.
But I think if we look at something like the spearfishing, those people could teach so many other people how they do it. And that's one example. Now, we've got to have regulations, our own people, around things that are done, because these regulations are from tens of thousands of years that people were taught how to do it properly. You don't just grab a gun. You just don't grab a bow and arrow. You don't just go and grab anything. You've got to be taught properly. And I think organisations need to really unpack, why do you want Indigenous people to be a part of your group? And if it's for the right reasons and not about, we'll need the Aboriginal voice to be part of it.
Yeah.
If it's for the right reasons, and by unpacking what are those right reasons, I think it's a plan that is hard to argue with if it's for the right reasons.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of push through Parliament that are the wrong reasons. But like you said, if we, in in South Australia, we have a group called Gulf Skin Divers. I'm not sure if you've
No, I haven't heard of them.
They're a spearfishing group here in South Australia. They do, a bunch of conservation work as well as their spearfishing competitions. They hold spearfishing competitions on Yorks, on Kangaroo Island, and they're a great group. I've had the president, Dave, and his daughter, who I think she was about 14 at the time, and she's been spearfishing and hunting since she was quite young. We should get organisations like Gulf Skin Divers to work with the Indigenous spearfishing community, and we could build something great. And same on the hunting level. Shasa have had you doing talks and there for different meals and events. I haven't been to any yet, but it's something that I do want to attend. But we could have these organisations, bringing an Indigenous twist to the hunting side of things.
Well, Chasa's already doing that by having conversations with me and other Indigenous peoples. Chasa is already working through how this can be happening for the right reasons.
That's great.
And I think then other organisations, if we start doing that, and where does that link in?
Yep.
So like the spearfishing, there's no point in doing it for us around the River Murray and the lower lakes. But when you're talking about Kangaroo Island, it's a different story. Or if they're doing it over on York Peninsula, go and work through with that group and find out where does your organisation fit amongst the Indigenous peoples.
Yep.
And instead of, then this is why that breakdown. Why would you want Indigenous people involved in your organisation? And if it is for the right reasons, then those solutions will come out of that.
Yeah, and that's it. Like I said to you before we started the podcast, look, me personally, I'm not well versed on Indigenous issues, the correct terminology, but I see a lot of, using I don't want to be insensitive or anything, but using smoking ceremonies at the start of absolutely everything. It's forcing stuff that's building more of a divide, in my personal opinion.
Yep, you're right. Because smoking ceremonies is that word ceremony is in it when special occasions. So one of the things that occurs is that every time something goes on, now both governments at all tiers, they will get up and they will say, I want to acknowledge the group, the past, present, emerging, and so forth. But then the next person gets up and says the same thing.
Yep.
By the time there's 5 or 6 people get up and says the same thing, everyone will switch off.
Yeah.
But it's about doing it properly by saying, okay, we want to acknowledge this group of people. But after that, you're causing a division. And it's about them paying respects to all people. But first up, paying respect to those people that have been here for tens of thousands of years. And then how do you do that? Is it through ceremony? Is it through acknowledgements? Is it through having somebody there participating? All of these things you can unpack.
Yeah.
But once you realise why you want that.
Yeah, to me personally, it seems like they're wanting that done for the wrong reasons. There's certain politicians that, in my opinion, ask KISS for the vote of the Indigenous people, but they're not actually listening to the conversation. They just want that vote, so they put this front up that they're
all ticking a box.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
And that's how I personally see it. And I don't know if I'm culturally wrong and seeing stuff differently, but that's just.
And on the other side, on the flip side, there's people who won't do it at all.
Yeah.
Now that's just as bad.
Yeah.
So it's like having not enough food or too much food.
Yeah.
Either one will make you sick.
Yeah.
But we've got to find balance.
And how do you think we do that? Just discussing it more on
relationships.
Yeah.
We do it by talking with people. Now, quite often, people don't know how to begin the conversation.
Yeah.
But in a lot of our country towns, there are Aboriginal people that play football and netball.
Yeah.
Start on a social level, talking with those people, not just on the netball court or the footy field. Actually have a conversation when you come off and talk about things, create relationship, even if the relationships begin by talking about the game they just had. And, then you start talking, seeing people in the shop, in your local deli, around your area, say hello to them, form relationships. And then as long as it's for the right reasons, I think everybody can build relationships together. And once we start that, we become a real powerful force, because we are the voters.
Yep.
Government is in there because we vote them in.
They work for us. Yeah.
They work for us. It's not the other way around. And as long as our people are understanding why, what we want and how we want to do it.
Yep. Yeah, there's this big cultural stigma when it comes to all of this, and it's very, very hard to navigate. Like, as for myself, I've straight up, I was open and honest with you. Like, I don't know how to approach this, but I've been looking very forward to having you on since seeing your stuff that you've been doing with Shasa. But again, I didn't know how to approach it. I don't know, the taboos on what not to say, what to say. I don't want to be insensitive, but I want to touch on some of the tougher topics as well, because it's just something that's not really relayed. We hear what the government wants us to hear and the push for certain things that they want, but you're not hearing it on a person-to-person
personal level,
which is where
and
it needs to
started with you making a phone call to me.
Yeah.
How simple was that? It might be difficult to make that initial call, but then after a while, we're sitting here enjoying a conversation together. Now, where this goes from now, other people, other listeners will listen in and say, how can we do the same? How can we pick up the phone and have a conversation? Who do we have a conversation with? And what do we talk about? So these are the sort of things I think we can work through. It's not hard, because we have, regardless of your race, your religion, your creed, we have common humanity amongst us.
100%.
So these commonalities is what we focus on, not the differences.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where hunting for me is a great thing, because no matter where in the world I travel to and people I meet, hunting is one thing, or fishing is one thing, or camping is one thing that I can relate to someone with. I've spoken about it on the podcast before, but when I was in New Zealand last year on the Southern Island in the hills, I was hunting with a New Zealander who was born in South Africa, 2 Americans, myself being Australian, and then we were in a hut butchering an introduced animal, which was the Bennett's wallaby from Tasmania, and we had a person from the Netherlands come over, and I can't remember somewhere else in that European region, but they've come over because New Zealand have these huts that you can just rock up to and stay. They're for hunters, they're for fishermen, they're for hikers. And they've come over and we've started chatting, and we're sharing the tahr that we shot, the deer that we shot, the kangaroo, and we're cooking it up, and we're all just chatting. Like, that hunting and that camping and being outdoors is what brings us together. And the more that we're forced to live in these city environments, the more division there seems to be. Like, it blows my mind that something so natural is something that just brings people together, like sitting around a campfire. If you go anywhere and someone's cooking some meat around a campfire, you go out and start chatting to them. It's the most welcoming feeling. Like, you feel natural. You look up at the stars, like going across the Simpson Desert and seeing what the stars are like where there's no light pollution. It's just absolutely amazing. And not everyone gets to do that. But the people that are forcing these laws, these hunting laws, they don't get out and experience that to the degree that we get to. There's nothing better than living out of a backpack for a week. It's hard. It's tiring. You're watching what you eat, watching what you drink, because you need to make it last, and you're struggling. It might be hell for that week, but once you get back out, it's the best time that you've ever had. And it just, blows my mind. Like, in Victoria right now, they're trying to turn 350,000 hectares of state forest into national park. and that's automatically going to cut off people going out full driving, camping, fishing, hunting, hound hunting. Like, there's people that go over and hunt sambar deer with hounds, and it's just going to cut it all off, which is just going to cause even more division because it's all cut off and they can't do it anymore. But yeah, it blows my mind. I can talk about this stuff all day.
But the solution is, let's keep the conversation.
Yeah.
You know, thank you very much for allowing me to have a conversation with you today. But also thank you to all the listeners, because what you're able to do is, hopefully I've planted a few seeds for those people to start thinking, well, what can we do? How can we do it? What are some of the solutions to our problems? But it's been a wonderful talk with you today.
And likewise, Mark, I can't thank you enough for being open to do this. I can't thank you enough for the video that you done on duck hunting and bow hunting. Especially the bow hunting one. You were so well spoken. You touched on so many great points. I have this guard the gate mentality. Once you open that gate and let one lifestyle fall, everything else is soon after. With the bow hunting ban, they wanted to ban bow fishing, which is essentially spear fishing, and that's where you've gone for the spear fishing side of things. If they ban bow fishing, it's the exact same thing as spear fishing,
Exactly.
but you're just outside the water. When are they going to come for spear fishing?
Won't be long.
When are they going to stop, all traditional use of hunting?
Yep.
It blows my mind. But I can't thank you enough, and I hope people do get this seed planted in them on how we can work together. It's definitely got my gears turning over to work out on what we can do. We've got all this amazing country here in South Australia that we can use for these outdoor purposes that are closed off from everybody. And, we could share these cultural experiences no matter whether you were born in Australia, whether your family's been here for, thousands of generations like
or
yours.
5 minutes.
Or 5 minutes,
There are always solutions to our problems.
That's it. Thank you very much,
No
Mark,
worries.
and much appreciated.
Thank you.
That's it for today's episode of Hunting Connection Podcast. I hope you found our conversation with Mark Koolmatrie as inspiring and insightful as I did. If you're interested in experiencing the rich cultural heritage of the Ngarrindjeri people firsthand, be sure to check out Cool Tours at cooltours.com.au. As always, thank you for tuning in, and if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, leaving us a review. Until next time, stay connected with the wild and keep the traditions alive. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Hunting Connection Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed our discussions and gained valuable insights into the world of hunting, fishing, and the outdoors. To stay connected with us and never miss out on an update, please be sure to follow us on social media, all at Hunting Connection Podcast. We appreciate your support and would love for you to share the podcast with your friends and family. Don't forget to tag us in your hunting photos on social media and let us know about your experiences. Your feedback is invaluable to us, so please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. Together, we continue growing and delivering more captivating episodes for all hunting enthusiasts. Stay connected, stay informed, and keep pursuing your passion for the hunt. Until next time, happy hunting.